first take a look at searching with keywords and Boolean operators and then limiting our search. Keywords are also called natural language, and that just means that they're not special vocabulary like mesh terms, and we'll look at those in the next video. But for now, we'll take a look at Boolean operators and go from there. You might have learned about this before with database searching, but basically all you need to remember is or means more and is used to combine a set of synonyms or related terms. For instance, if you searched for low fat or low carb, then the database would find anything that covers either of those terms. But if you search with and, it narrows things down, and an article has to contain both of those terms in order to be hit in your search. So you can search for diet and type 2 diabetes, like in this example, and you wouldn't get articles that only mentioned one of those terms. So that's really what you need to start with to do a search, and then apply your limits, because you can narrow things down a bit too quickly if you just click on the limiters too fast. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on. Something else to keep in mind about advanced search with PubMed is that you should search each concept separately, and that's so you can combine them in different ways using those Boolean operators, and that will save you time in the long run. This is a really simple analogy, and remember that you don't always search every PICO term. Sometimes C is control and it's implied, sometimes outcome is implied, just you want your patient to get better or something that is implied like that. But this is just a little illustration about how you can move your search terms around, and I'll demonstrate that right now. I'm back at the search results we got when we just put in our basic PICO terms: carpal tunnel syndrome, physical therapy, and surgery. I just wanted to point out that these 3 articles found by citation matching, that's just the PubMed algorithm trying to help you find some relevant articles, and look through them yourself if you want to. These might be useful, they might not be. This is more about cost effectiveness than the treatment itself, it looks like from the title, but you could look into it and see if it's something that could be more useful. I'll just show you real quick for display options. This is summary right now, but you can look at the abstracts, and that's more scrolling, but you can see the abstracts here if you want to see a little bit more about each of the articles. And then there's these full text links here. And that's what I was talking about with finding full text, so going to PubMed through UT Southwestern, because you wouldn't see all of these on just pubmed.gov. So I'm going to go to advanced search. We'll take a quick look at the building block method, or searching each concept separately like we looked at in that slide with the Legos. So I'm going to put in just carpal tunnel syndrome by itself and search that alone, and then just keep going back to advanced search, and I'm going to put in my other terms as well. So here you can see that I got varying numbers of results for these 3 terms, and I can combine them together with and, but first I just wanted to show you something you can do here if you'd like to try to expand your search and find synonyms. If you go back to basic search, it's just this little PubMed.gov logo. If you go back to basic search and start typing things in, you might get some suggestions, and these might give you ideas for what to search for. This isn't the best way to find synonyms because it's just the database trying to guess what you're searching for. But carpal tunnel release, as you might know, is a common surgery for carpal tunnel syndrome. And so if we go back here, we can see that we have many fewer results for that than the very broad topic of surgery in general. So that might be something to consider. And that's something that you know by looking at background information, or that you just know from your clinical experience, day-to-day, that part of evidence-based practice. So just as an example here, you can do surgery and then click on those three little dots and you can add and or not. And don't worry about not at this point in time. It's a more advanced search feature and oftentimes it leaves too many things out. So just worry about and or for now. Okay, and then we can go back to advanced search. And this is where it's useful because you can combine these in different ways. And though it's some work up front to type all of these in, it saves you time in the long run. So I'm going to add my patient's condition and my other PICO terms. As you can see, I did get 21 more results when I added in carpal tunnel release than I got with just searching with surgery. So that's just a way to expand out your search. And that can be helpful because sometimes you need to broaden out or expand your search or narrow it down depending on what kinds of results you're getting. So let's take a quick look here. So I've added in these filters by going through and adding the check marks next to them. Just be advised that with sex and age, sometimes if you're too aggressive with these filters, you'll leave out articles that might be useful to you. So I'm going to put adult 19 plus years because our patient is 62 in this example. But she's 62, so she's kind of on the cusp between middle-aged and aged as PubMed defines it. So that can narrow it down too far because sometimes researchers aren't that specific about what age group they're covering. And same thing with male and female. Sometimes that just narrows it down too much. Sometimes it is important to make sure that you're searching for articles that relate to your patient's sex, but sometimes it can just narrow it down too much. Usually you're pretty safe with humans and English, narrowing it down to that. So we got 278 results. Even if you have 100, 200 results, you can look through the first few and just see if they look like it's something that could be helpful because these are sorted by best match. You can also go and sort them by most recent. So you don't have to get it down to 50 or 10 or 20 results to start looking through them, but it can be helpful. So let's go ahead and do a few more to narrow it down. So remember from our flowchart that randomized controlled trials can be a good source for answering therapy questions. But if you can get a meta-analysis or a systematic review, those can be good as well as a higher level of evidence. Okay, and now we get to the point where we got 52 results. You can start looking through them. And this one looks like it might be useful. You can look through the numbers of patients, 120 patients, between the control group and the experimental group. Look at the scale they used. Just this is where you use your own expertise and your own critical thinking skills to see if this might be useful for your patient. And then you can click on full text to see if we have it. And if there are a couple full text buttons, try them both because this one says that we don't have it and that you might have to get it through interlibrary loan, but this one took me to the article's full text. And you can download the PDF if you would like, and then you can look at the conclusions to see that it looks like they found that conservative treatment is equally effective in the long term, so this might be something that could help our patient. Just a couple other things. If you go to any of these article records, you may see cited by or similar articles, and those can help you find more related articles as well. And if we go back, if we do take off the age and sex filters, we get a systematic review and meta-analysis that wasn't showing up. So that's just a little example of how filters might narrow down your search too much at times. One more thing to note when you're doing these advanced searches just with keywords, you'll notice that there are these little arrows or carrots next to each of your searches that says details. at the top. And if you click on that, then that will show you what the algorithm is doing to try to help you out. And this is called automatic term mapping. And so it's trying to map it to a mesh term, which we'll look at in the next video. And then it's trying to help you out by doing different variations on carpal tunnel syndrome in the different fields. And with this, it's going to surgery, surgical procedures with mesh. Sometimes it does different endings for the words. So this is looking for surgeries with an S and trying to look at the variations for you. And sometimes this is great and very helpful, but sometimes if you don't watch out, it does do things that aren't quite correct, because carpal tunnel release is a surgery in this case, but the algorithm or the automatic term mapping is mapping it to release, like getting out of the hospital or being discharged from a hospital or clinic. So that's something to think about, and we'll look more at mesh and why it's a good reason to use both mesh and keywords in our next video. When you get more into PubMed, there's a learning curve, but it can definitely be worth it to learn how to do quick searches and more in-depth searches in PubMed. So we'll do a quick exercise and then move on to medical subject headings.